Hello, my fellow seekers. Welcome to Into the Work, therapy for empaths, seekers, and the intuitively driven, where you have front row seats to therapy sessions and expert interviews that will help you define the important work that you're here to do. So I guess you actually have something better than front row seats. You practically have a seat on my couch. That's right, you will have unrestricted access to actual sessions with real people, exploring real life issues. You will continue to be inspired by powerful conversations with experts and healers that might just share exactly what it is that you need to hear to get unstuck. I am Michelle Pauverman. I am a recovering people pleaser and former anxiety-driven empath, turned now mostly grounded psychotherapist and intuitive coach. I have been helping people for almost 20 years manage their limiting beliefs and anxiety to finally stop the self-sabotage and step into their gifts. I created this podcast, Into the Work, to give you a place to learn more about yourself and give you actionable strategies to finally move those roadblocks holding you back so you can go for what you want. Above all else, my hope is that this podcast is a catalyst for your awakening. If you're listening, you've already taken a step towards getting off of autopilot, and our next steps together will be taken episode by episode, waking you up to the possibilities, the new ways of thinking and being, so that you can stretch into that next level of your story. The spark has already been lit, and my friend, this is a journey from spark to brilliance. So together, let's light a fire.
And welcome back to the show. Today, I'm talking with Jess Reid. And if you've been listening for a while, Jess has been on my show before. She was actually on episode number 2. And so when we're done here, if you are loving what you hear and you're hungry for more, just know that you can head on over to episode number 2. Weight loss is spiritual work, how most of us are getting it wrong. Going to be a lot like today. And I'll go ahead and put in the show notes to make sure that you have all the info so you can jump on over. And today I want to introduce Jess. So Jess is a wild wellness coach, and she is the host of her own show, WildWellness With Jess Podcast, where she helps others come into the wisdom of nature and their intuition to create a life they really like. Jess and I are reconnecting today because we really want to help you kind of move and reframe this whole approach to how you're feeling in your body and how you're expanding and growing as a soul. And we want to help you really feel like this is more of an awakening than I have to do something because I'm disgusted with myself kind of thing. This is really an opportunity for you to step into your highest and best. We want to help support you to do that. This conversation has not yet begun, but I do want to say I think it's going to be awesome, and that I highly encourage you to grab a notebook if you need to pause us, because I think what I find, the feedback I got from my last episode with Jess, was everybody was taking notes. So go ahead and do that, grab that. And if you like this episode as much as I think you're going to, I'd really appreciate it if you went ahead and liked it and reviewed it. That's what gets like-minded people like yourself to find the show and to get inspired like I hope you feel today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Jess. And thank you, Jess, for coming on today.
I'm so excited to be here again. Thank you so much for having me back.
Yes, I love it. I'm going to kick us off. So I emailed Jess, and this conversation started because I was noticing what I emailed to Jess to say, hey, Jess, I am noticing that all these women, and myself included, was a struggle that I went through too. Like all these women are on the spiritual path. And one of the core things that I'm teaching, I know you're teaching, is how do we, love ourselves and fully accept ourselves as we are right now. And what I was finding why I reached out to you is because I was finding that there is this incongruency in deciding that I need to be on a diet, or I need to change my body, or I want to lose weight. And so there's this soul quest that I'm doing to try to, okay, I'm gonna make myself, love myself. I'm ditching the whole diet culture. I am not playing a role in that anymore. I am gonna just love myself. And so a lot of women are like, but then when the diet conversation starts coming in, they start feeling really triggered. And they start feeling like this is against my spiritual values. And so there's a shame if we do, shame if we don't. And so when I wrote that to you, Jess, like your comeback was immediately diving into like core body issues. Objectification was the first thing you mentioned. And it was just like, yes, we need to have a conversation about this. This is going to be big.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to kick it off from there, but I know that one of the things you had mentioned in the very beginning was just this idea that objectification is just so huge in terms of our connection with ourselves and disconnection with ourselves. So
yeah.
Do you want to chat about that?
Yes. Let's do it. Oh, man. I was about to say, and I'll lead into this in a second, like what actually is body objectification. But just kind of, I'm feeling into like, what is love? Like, what does it mean to actually love our bodies? Because it sounds so great, but how do we know that we're actually doing it? And how do you know that you have it when you do have it? And I was listening to this beautiful podcast, Glennon Doyle's podcast, and she talks a lot openly about her journey with body stuff. And she has an anorexia diagnosis, and she's working through her own healing journey. And she's also sober. And so she shares how much of a fan she is of Al-Anon, and that she learned this phrase in Al-Anon, and that love as an acronym means let others voluntarily evolve. I loved it so much when I heard it. I was like, oh, that's so good. But also, let others voluntarily evolve. Yeah. And so to let people be where they are and not try to change them, not try to control them, even as much as we think that we know what's best for somebody else and we want to so badly tell them and influence them and all of the things, but to just truly accept and love what is, right? And trust that they will evolve at their own speed in their own time. And that's really the only loving way to do it. We can't love and control.
We put that in on ourselves,
yes.
right?
Yes, exactly.
That we will allow ourselves to evolve in our own time and love where we are at. Yeah.
Yes, but instead we try to force ourselves to evolve according to someone else's expectations, whether that be a specific person or whether that be diet culture or society at large or the new year or, whatever it happens to be, a commercial that we saw, what our friend is doing, what our mom is doing, what anybody else And so to let ourselves, that starts with an O as well. Let ourselves voluntarily evolve. And also just, to consider that love means consideration of someone else and to be considerate of ourselves. And love also does mean admiration of others. And we tend to think of that's the only thing, like, oh, I don't love myself because I don't admire myself. Well, are you considerate of yourself? Do you practice loving actions towards yourself? Are you being respectful of your own pace and your own journey? And so that's a very loving way to treat yourself. And
I think so many people, no matter how evolved we are as humans here, we have to bathe this in this human experience. I think that, it's a path, the love path, we'll call it, is when we fall off, get in the mud, get dirty, and come back on, Yeah. And I think so many people find even what you just said so difficult to be in a place where they can say, yeah, I have all this wonderful self-talk and I'm right. And I'm loving of myself and compassionate of myself. And it's really a job. It's a commitment, and it's right.
It's
discipline.
Constant journey of love versus fear, right? Just like anything else. And we go through this with our bodies and food and weight and body image and all this stuff. Like it's love versus fear constantly. That's what everything in life kind of boils down to. And I like to imagine it like we're, driving down the road on this road trip and you're listening to the radio. And I love Kathy Heller. She talks about attuning to the frequency of love, and that your body, yourself, your soul is a receiver, right? Like a radio receiver. And so to stay tuned in to the frequency of love. And, there's a million different channels that you can listen to that's all around you in the airwaves, right? Sometimes we're tuned into the frequency of bitterness, jealousy, frustration, exhaustion, all of it. But you kind of narrow it down and it's all like the essence of love or the essence of fear. And so I kind of see this journey as like being on a road trip, and you're tuned in to the frequency of love and you're bopping around and you're like, yeah, Then all of a sudden, as you're driving, the radio gets scrambly, right? And now you're starting to hear rah, 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 all this other stuff, all this chatter is coming in, and you flip the station again, and then you get a clear signal, but now it's fear, right? And now you're in that for a little while, and you're like, oh, actually, I don't like how this song is making me feel, or this is boring, or just whatever. And then you tune back in. But it's this constant journey of reattuning to the frequency of love in anything.
And that's where we have the power. Is in showing up and being present to recognize, oh, I'm like tapping into the wrong frequency here. I'm allowing this frequency to come through, and it's my job to recognize that and shift it and jump back into like love, right?
Exactly. But it's always there. It's right there with you. All that you have to do is change the station.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that, because it is always accessible.
Yeah.
Even though you feel like it's not, because there are times you're going to feel like it's not.
Right. But it is actually our inherent setting is love. And it everything else is what we have learned. And that feels like it's our default setting, but it's actually not. It's just the most familiar thing that we've been replaying over and over and over again.
And that is why I always say, like, it is the path of least resistance for some reason, right? In these unconscious realms that we have, all this programming we have isn't our natural state. It's these habitual patterns that we have that are bringing us into these negative states and get us into this place of not loving our bodies and being like in a state where we're being hard on ourselves, and we're suddenly like spiraling into that self-loathing around our body. And we passed by a mirror where just yesterday you were like, hey, you look pretty good. But the frequency you're in, right, depends on what you're going to have as a response to the exact same thing in the mirror. Does that make sense?
Exactly. And I think when we're on this topic of like what we've learned versus what is our natural setting is a beautiful place to transition into this concept of body objectification. Because body objectification is not just about feeling like your body doesn't look the way that it's supposed to look. Body objectification is, in essence, the idea that my body exists as an object in someone else's world, instead of my body being the subject of my own world. And when we are born, we have no concept of our bodies existing in anybody else's world. This is just my world, and I'm living in. It's totally even boundaryless. Like, the default mode network in our brain is not even online yet. And sometimes we can go back to this beautiful place of being purely the subject of our own experience when we can get into, like an altered state of consciousness, maybe a psychedelic experience or meditation, or like a deeply profound religious or kind of peak experience. And we can get into that state where we're no longer an object in anybody else's world. I'm the subject. That's it. It's just my body is here to be the vessel of my experience. For me to experience this world that my consciousness, that love flowing through me has created. And what a magical, powerful experience that is. And that's the journey. Apart from any of this is, how do we get back to that? How do we get back to being
so far?
Yeah.
Particularly as women. Right? Particularly as women. Yeah. That's just not how we were conditioned.
Right. And so it's not just about my body looking hot for someone else's approval. That's one form of body objectification. But there's a million other forms of body objectification, such as, I exist as an accessory to somebody else's story or mission or agenda. I'm here to assist my boss. I'm here to assist my children in what they're trying to do. I'm here to assist my spouse or my partner in what they're trying to do. Like, I am an object or an accessory to someone else's story, as opposed to the leading lady of my own story. And that is the overall indoctrination that we are trying to really break out of, that just familiar pattern. And it feels easier to just exist as an extra in somebody else's story.
Absolutely. So we know that, as you say that, we're all like, oh, yeah, wow, I can see where that's showing up in my life. That's me.
Yeah.
But I can appreciate that there is also this way that puts us in a place of powerlessness. And I feel like obsessing about weight, discouraging our body and being disconnected from it, all of that comes from when we feel powerless. And so I'll see women and we'll have this conversation about the seesaw they're in when they feel stuck and funky and not feeling like they are the leading lady of their life, right? They're not in the role in the movie where they're making shit happen. They're just like stuck and they're in that place. Maybe they're in an unknown territory. They're at an in-between station, right? But they are stuck. And I tell you, it is so common for all of us to start to turn into this dislike of our bodies. And then, this seesawing happens because once they get into feeling better, they have action, they movement, they become more, as you say, connected to the self as terms of the object. Then I feel like that's when you can see all of it shift. And isn't it interesting that being an ornament of somebody's gaze, it really makes us get to a place where we are dedicating our worth based on that. And so if we're feeling powerless, we're drawing worth from being that ornament, right? That's the objectification piece, right?
Yeah.
And so I find if you're not loving your body, check what's going on in your life.
Yeah.
Right? If as women, if we are feeling triggered of focusing on our body and we have to be better in order to be more worthy, then look at what's happening in your life and your dissatisfaction and things like that of what's happening. How stuck are you? Things like that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I would even expand even beyond like the idea of like being an ornament, right? But being a utility,
Sure.
Something useful to someone else,
yes.
right? Like,
Yes.
I am helpful. I am productive. My body is a machine that works, like it's the same reason why we can't ever rest or we can't ever stop.
Right.
Like,
oh my gosh.
we have to feel useful or of service. And we're seeking that approval in that way as well. And a lot of times when we don't feel like our bodies are a valuable ornament, at least they're a valuable utility, and we overcompensate.
Yes. I'd never put that together. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still that same approval-seeking behavior. And this shows up in dieting, it shows up in sex, it shows up in our work lives, it shows up in our relationships, it shows up everywhere. Body objectification shows up everywhere. And I am still constantly unraveling another layer of body objectification. And I've been at this, since like 2013. And so I'm like, and I'm at my goal weight. I love my body. I'm happy with my body. And then I'll experience something and I'll be like, that was body objectification. Yeah.
It's so deep.
I
mean, that's why I say this human experience is, I think we have to be in it here, like we have to go through it. And so you're going to get off the path, come back and reconnect. But yeah. And I think it's good for people to hear, like, okay, Jess, who's out there, this is what she's doing. This is her like life purpose in ways, right, of how she's reaching it. But you yourself also are going through it because it's part of being human. And it's okay if you're going through it. It's just getting yourself back on track.
Yes.
That's really important.
Yes. It's absolutely not something that I blame myself for or feel bad for when it happens. It kind of shocks me at times, actually, just how deep it can run and how in our blind spot it can be, right? Because it's just the air that we breathe. But yeah, you can't judge yourself by how frequently it revisits you, but measure your progress by what you do with it when it revisits you and how quickly you're able to get back into love. Is the way to measure your progress. And I see so many people beating themselves up like, why does this keep happening? Am I ever going to not feel this way anymore? Am I ever going to not get like triggered or, tempted or thrown off course or whatever? And it's like, yeah, probably not. Like, it's to be human is to be revisited by all of this stuff. Like, it's the systems that are screwed up, not you that's screwed up. And so, of course, the screwed up system is going to continue to offer you lots of different ways to come back into alignment with being broken and harmful to you, right? And so that's going to happen. That's to be expected. And so if we can just wrap our minds around that and stop judging ourselves by kind of feeling triggered by it. Yeah.
I love that so much because I also almost feel like I'll use the word detox. Like I just think of it as a detox. Like you have to keep going through it. Like if you want to go, be super strong, you got to go to the gym and have really painful workouts, right? Like there's all different ways you can look at it, but I love that you just said that. That is and I think it's very true. That's how you can truly measure yourself is how quickly you can get back in alignment. Not that it's not going to happen. You don't control your brain. Yeah. You don't control your thoughts. It's just how you respond to them. That's really all that matters. And so, I love that. Yeah. We're talking about a lot of these unconscious drives that go into weight loss before we even jump any further, right? So like, one of the things that I see a lot and I experienced in my own life when I was younger is just this idea of really role playing, right? And this is very disconnected from ourselves, this idea that like we sort of role play. So even intimacy can be role playing. It's like, I'm going to be whoever you need me to be today versus like knowing myself and being in myself and being present. And I think we think that's the commodity, is that, that we're going to be what people need us to be, whether it's useful, whether it's right, whether it is the beautiful object and the perfect, model in the magazine. And so I think that when we get into that role, we lose track of the fact that our presence is our greatest commodity. Being 100% in our body, just being present for somebody. And that's a huge commodity, and we don't do it for ourselves. We don't do it out in the world. And so I don't know, I just kind of on a tangent there, but it just feels like it's part of that process. We get lost in really understanding the whole point is just being present,
You're right. To be in your body with someone else is the greatest gift that you could give to them. And it is also the greatest source of your own pleasure. We are not actually getting pleasure out of our lives because we're not in our bodies. Even we're going about these pleasurable activities, like eating at night, for example, or just whatever it is that you're doing that you feel like you're doing in excess, to the point where it's harmful to you. We are overdoing the quantity because it's lacking the quality of being fully present in the moment with anything. We're not fully present with our partners, where everybody's looking at their phones. You're watching TV and you're scrolling your phone at the same time. We're literally doing more than one thing at a time, all the time, and therefore watering down the pleasure that's constantly available to us. We're in an extreme pleasure deficit, and this is a lot of our problem.
It's a lot of our problem. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think it is a lot of our problem.
Yeah.
I did this energy medicine school for a few years. We'd go in for these weekends, and when I entered into it, I was like, why are we playing all these games? It's like, I want to learn about energy. I want to do healings. I want to and they're just like, okay, now we're going to play this alligator game, or we're going to do this dance party. Then we're going to do this. And I was like, I'm spending my whole day playing games. Yeah. And it really was a reflection of how serious I had gotten in my life, that I was irritated that there were games. And then to recognize the power of that by the end of the weekend, my entire energy shift, everything had changed.
Yeah.
And, I also found out how competitive I am. Yeah. But, just that, that there's not enough play for any of us. So maybe we can even make a statement here that if you're not loving your body and you're entering into that sort of deficit, that sort of scarcity around yourself, that you don't have enough play.
Yeah. None of us have enough play. But also the most ironic thing about that is that when they research how learning actually is most effective, it is through play.
Right. Wow.
And so whatever it is that we think is binary or mutually exclusive, you're going into this and you're like, I don't want to play, I want to learn. Right?
Yes.
But you actually are learning so much more through playing. You got so many more insights and you opened yourself up to full presence. And therefore, it's sank in so much more deeply. And that is how children learn. This is our natural setting, is to learn through play. So we end up being more productive the more that we actually play. And it's the same thing with the journey with weight loss and food and all of these things. If you are on that journey, is, I actually make the case, it's not enjoyment versus efficiency in your journey. It is actually enjoyment creates more efficiency. The more that you deprive...
You hear that, everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, we need to say that again.
Yeah, enjoyment creates more efficiency because if you deprive yourself of enjoyment, what happens? You intelligently resist it and you rebel, and then you take something for yourself instead of giving it to yourself, and it has a totally different energy feeling to it. Then you feel like garbage because you didn't do what you said you were going to do, as opposed to if you just planned to be good to yourself. And I don't mean, I don't mean actually being harmful to yourself. I mean being fully present and savoring the beauty that nature provides for us in all of its forms of nourishment to us. Pleasure is abundant all around, and actually creating space for that, creating space for rest, creating space for sex, creating space for good food, all of the things that life actually has for us, play, music, dancing, all of these things that are to be human. And we're so completely divorced from because the system just wants us to be a machine that helps somebody else get rich or whatever, right? Or to look pretty for somebody else. Yeah. And so the more that we actually prioritize enjoyment, it creates more efficiency because then we stop rebelling. And then it's not this start, stop thing that just isn't working, and will actually stay consistent because it's sustainable because we actually built in enjoyment.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a big difference.
Yeah.
And such a different way to approach it. that you're like, I can actually do this and I can actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of reminds me also, I think I might have mentioned this in the email that I wrote to you, but there's also this energy that we bring. And so I like to mention this because I think it's like really important. Some of us can have an aha with this. So I want you to listen in if you're listening. But there's an energy that we bring that we are either against something or we're for it, right? And so a lot of times I find, let me give you a little story. So for instance, I used to work with sororities, right? So I worked with sorority with young women who I was teaching them all about eating disorders and body love and all that stuff. I brought a speaker and she showed us images of media and how they're trying to manipulate us. And I got into such a place at that time of my life that I was so angry that I couldn't walk a mall, I couldn't go to a movie, I couldn't watch TV, I couldn't literally go anywhere or do anything without seeing objectification happening on the screen, in a window, anywhere, right? Where women were being used to sell something and I was in this place where I was just so frustrated and angry. I was against, right? And I talk about this a lot, especially if you have an inner activist in you. If you're somebody who had, it's really important that you train yourself to be for and not against, because while sometimes that's needed, we do need a dose of that when really bad shit's going on. But we can't live there. And so part of what you're talking about is also being for something. And so when we shift into this conversation that we're having about where to come from when we diet and when we come from when we want to, eat well, is to be for ourselves instead of against. And that energy of being for something is it's huge. It's so different, right?
Yeah.
It's so different.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think that for a long time, I actually really resisted releasing body objectification, even though I knew it was there, right? I know that this system is, around me, and I know that it's kind of screwed up, but I would almost purposely choose to drink from that cup because I thought that it would work. In other words, get me to my end result. I know that diet culture doesn't work, or I know that diet culture is hurting me. It's not good for me. It's, it's kind of enslaving me or just whatever. Yet I'm going to go drink from that poison because it'll make me skinny. And I don't trust. It's basically I don't trust that I'm going to get my desired result any other way. I've never seen it modeled. I've never, I don't believe that it's actually possible. So for a little while, I'm just going to keep drinking this poison of body objectification. And then I'll get to where I want to be. And then maybe I'll give myself the luxury of loving myself, right? Or of unsubscribing from
when you lost the weight, you did the things, I'll have you be everybody will admire you, right? That's what you said, right? We need part of that admiration, right? So we'll be loved, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Even though it's almost I know this system is screwed up, but I'm going to purposely use it to accomplish my, ends. But the problem is that you never really get there. Right. And so it's almost this system of capitalism is screwed up and yada, 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 but I'm going to use it and then I'm going to retire and then I'm going to move to Portugal. Something like that. But it's you don't actually have to do that. We don't trust that if we were to actually love ourselves, that we would be in a body that is worthy of love, I suppose. It's this never ending cycle that you don't really believe it. And so you don't ever really step out of it. Or you step out of it temporarily, but then you're oh my God, I actually gained 3 pounds. I had to go back to, hating myself. Yeah.
Right. Yes. That is real right there. And that is a thing for so many people.
Yeah.
Is that motivational factor of self-loathing and self-defeat and all that, right?
Yeah. It's basically, once again, it's love versus fear. And so the motivation that we're very familiar with is fear, force, and shame.
Yes.
And these things actually do work, but they only work temporarily. And so that's why we've all lost the same 10 pounds a million times.
Yeah.
Because, we lose it with fear and force and shame. And then we eventually intelligently resist what feels like very unloving behavior to ourselves, rightfully so. And then it happens again and again and again and again. But love is the only resource that never runs out. And so it's
because when you do it the other way, you're left wanting.
Yeah.
when you did it from fear, you didn't actually reach a place where you're like, okay, I feel really good about myself now. Like, this is it. I'm now ready for love and I'm open. No, you're like, this isn't enough. It's never going to change. It's always not going to be enough because if inside you feel that you were at the core not enough.
Yes.
But yeah.
Exactly. It's a fool's errand. It's a trap.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is why we're talking today. Because we're not going to do this anymore as best as we can.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like one of the best ways, I bet you people are like, okay, so what do I do? Where do I start? I think one of the best ways to step out of body objectification and into being the subject of your life is to actually discover yourself and learn about yourself and love yourself and like yourself. And we think we can only do that through the lens of our appearance, or that's really where we get ourselves stuck is, probably through, how do I look to other people? How does my body look? Or how useful am I to other people, right? Because this is our conditioning. But I am such a nerd for like all things personality assessments, like understanding your astrology, your human design, your Enneagram, like all of these things. And when I very first started to encounter them, I was approaching them through the lens of like, well, how can I learn about all the ways that I'm screwed up so that I can fix myself? As opposed to actually like just learn about how I am naturally built, that I like these things about myself, like my strengths, And so I think this is a really beautiful place to start, is to start to discover who you naturally are and like some things about yourself. If you can't like anything about your body, to explore some of these maps of consciousness and explore your strengths. And then the more that you love and appreciate yourself and your strengths, the more that you're going to see how you can put them to use for anything that you want to put to use in your life, rooted in love, rooted in the motivation of love. But like you talked about powerlessness, this is another, really helpful medicine for powerlessness, is knowing yourself and knowing your natural goodness, your wholeness, your resourcefulness. So yeah, this is one of the first places that I point my clients to. And I'm sure that you encounter this as well. Like when people come to therapy or when they come to coaching, they're like, here's my problem. How do we fix it? Like, well, first we need to realize that you are capable of fixing anything. Do you believe that? Probably not. So let's talk about your strengths and your resources.
No, that's why I'm here to see you. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you use any of these things with your clients?
Absolutely. So I really feel like the work just becomes, again, can we learn to observe without becoming? So I try to teach people to just show up more and try to observe without, you cannot observe yourself and then be pissed at yourself for what you see, because that's not fair, right? That's what happens a lot. So we really want non-judgmental observance. That is like the key to the beginning. Yeah. The first thing before you can do anything, you're on autopilot, you're living, you come to Jess, you come to me, right? Like, been on autopilot. You're like, I need to get out of this crazy. And the first thing you need to do is actually show up in the present moment. Because the only time you can make any changes in your life is in the present moment, not in the past, not in the future. And so how can you show up and be more present and observe without becoming, and right? So then I say to people, like, take a look at what you just said, what thought process is happening. I want you to put it over here. Okay. And then I want you to talk to it or look at it and be like, is that what you want? Make a choice. What do you want for yourself? And then I use the framework of vibration. And I said, what this is low vibration. This is constriction. And if your goal, why you're coming to me, why you're paying for this, why you're wanting more is for you to not feel this way anymore, then you've got to show up and start having some boundaries with yourself. And so we could talk about boundaries, but, really need to start shifting your relationship with yourself. And so I do that work before I even have people do boundary work with them in relationship with other people, because I really feel like you have to get it here. You have to get your boundaries straight here so that you can go out there and do it, because it's really hard to stay in your body out there if you haven't made the connection here,
Yes, 100%. And I agree. And like prior to boundary setting too, I think another really useful thing is like knowing how you want to feel. A lot of us are taught to know what we want out of life. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or, what are your New Year's resolutions? Or like, it's all about these external results, right?
Big,
But the more that we think about it and the more that we learn about how we are wired to behave is we don't really want any external result as much as we want how we believe we will feel when we have that thing. We want feelings, not results, ultimately. And so to take some time to explore, how do you want to feel? And usually this starts with, how do I not want to feel? What are you sick of feeling? You know, like we can access that more easily. Like, I am so sick of feeling disgusted with myself. I'm so sick of feeling ashamed. I'm so sick of feeling embarrassed or guilty or tired or exhausted or resentful or jealous or, you know, any of these like emotions that we don't want to be feeling, like the low vibrational stuff, right? So starting with that, like, how do I not want to feel? And then flipping, well, how do I actually want to feel? You mentioned this earlier, like, it's so important to actually know what you want. What are you aiming for? What are you for? Instead of what are you against? And so then when you know, like maybe like 3 to 5 emotions that are your favorite, like, okay, now you have a North Star. Now you have something that can like lead you and guide you and direct you. And you can say, am I in alignment with this? Some people choose this like a word for the year or something, right? Like, I've always had a hard time choosing just one, but I try to pick like, 3 to 5 words that help me know when I'm feeling this, I know I'm in alignment. And then it becomes a filter for me. Like, am I feeling how I want to feel right now? If not, I'm the leading lady. I can shift it. And so once you've identified those feelings, then you can ask yourself, okay, well, what people, places, things, ideas, habits, relationships, commitments, what leads me to feel my undesired feelings? And what leads me to feel my desired feeling? Okay, how can I release some of these things that actually are creating the undesired feelings? In other words, set boundaries, like you said. And then how can I bring in more of what leads me to my desired feeling? Because that's the whole point of setting a boundary. It's saying no to something so that you can say yes to something else. Because we are temporarily in this finite situation where time is finite, right? Our energy is finite. It runs out, right? And so we do need to say no to some things to say yes to other things, and boundaries with ourselves and boundaries with others. But if you don't have a concept of why are you setting boundaries, you probably never will. And what's the point of setting the boundary? What's the point of saying no to this person? Because it allows me to say yes to this, which is my North Star.
Yes. I love that. You framed that really well. And I think that is, it helps us shift out of that place of selfishness, like to recognize, or let's help people as they're listening to this, shift out of that place of fearing selfishness and fearing that putting myself into that place, like that it's okay for you to say no because your yes is actually really important and that you matter and that those things are really important to you getting to this place. And realistically, you getting to the more expansive state, becoming the person you want to be, which is the way I frame that a lot, is that I'll ask people, very similar to what you said, is just that question of, okay, if you can't think of what you want to feel, because some people have difficulty asking, well, I don't know, good. I'll say, who do you want to become? What would she look like? What would her day look like? What would, but having an anchor in that, you recognize that everybody who loves you and that you love is going to benefit so much from you becoming who you're meant to be and who you're meant to expand into, right?
Yeah.
And, one of the things you said to me, because Jess had to cancel one of our recordings last minute, and you had said to me, I trust that if this is good for me, it's going to be good for you too.
Yeah.
And I love that so much. I love that because that really is so true. And I want to say that here too, that you can just say, I trust that if I have to set this boundary, if I have to say no, I can trust that it's going to be good for you too.
Yes.
It's always good for everybody.
It is.
Even if you're letting somebody down in your head.
Yep.
It's actually really good for them too, right?
It is, because that's how love works. Love cannot be loving to you and unloving to someone else. And love cannot be unloving to you while being loving to someone else. That is not love.
Right?
It stops being love. Love's infinite. Love is always loving to everyone involved. And I got that concept kind of from Elizabeth Gilbert. She says there's no such thing as one-way liberation. What's good for you is good for someone else always, even if it does lead them to feel disappointed. Why are they disappointed? Because maybe it's because they love you. If you say, no, I'm not going to come home for Christmas, they feel disappointed. Mm-hmm. Isn't that good for them to feel disappointed? Isn't right? As opposed to them being like, fine, we didn't want you there anyway. Like, what are you actually wanting? Are you wanting apathy? Of course, they're going to have an emotional response to you saying no, but in some way that's actually good for them too, right?
Yeah.
To really, if nothing else, that they have permission to do the same.
Yes. Yes. And so as we bring this back, we were talking about how to help people move forward in this so that they can start to really embrace the process. I just want to love and accept myself as I am. How do I bring in, and I want to lose 15 pounds, right? Of course, that's what you were starting to talk about is how do you want to feel, and focusing on how is it that you want to expand and grow, and what vibration do you want to have? And the weight will fall off when you do all the right things. And are you playing enough? And but I just want to kind of get clear on our direction here as we're talking, that those are all some of the things you're saying are really important pieces as to getting started in the right direction. Does that make sense? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that's most important to echo back to is like this idea of like allowing ourselves to evolve. We are going to evolve over the next year, no matter what. Whether we
bring it all the time.
Yeah, whether we bring conscious intention to it or not, we are going to evolve. We're constantly responding to life and to what love is placing in our path, right? I believe in a benevolent, loving universe that we are co-creating together with. And so I literally believe that even if I put in zero effort, like intentional direction or whatever, that my life would still somehow be beautiful because the universe loves me so much that it's just going to keep knocking on my door, asking me, inviting me into evolution. And it's the same way that children, they're just constantly evolving. You can't stop it. There's nothing that you can do to stop them from growing up as much as we might want to at times. We're still doing that as adults. Like, I mean, the more that you study science, like you realize like your skin cells are changing over, your hair is changing over, like literally like you have an entirely different body every 7 years. I mean, we're constantly growing and evolving. So we also have the ability to bring some kind of like loving intention to that, co-creation together with that. And we actually impede it, I think, when we bring unloving intention, in other words, control to it. We're actually like stopping the loving, benevolent efforts of the universe. And this is why we feel stuck, is because we're bringing an opposing energy to the natural love that the universe is offering us to evolve. So when we can match loving intention, okay, cool. God, source, universe, love wants me to evolve and is going to be constantly offering me beautiful invitations for my growth and my progress. And this is what love does. This is how all of nature works. Okay, so how do I co-create together with that? And if I do have an intention to change my body, okay, that's allowed. It's allowed. Actually, we think, okay, in order to love myself, I have to just accept that my body's not going to change. Actually, your body is going to change over the next year, no matter what. Like everything's going to be changing over. And so what loving inputs can you put in and to like co-create together what your body's going to look like a year from now? Because it will look different no matter what you do. No matter what you do, it will look different because we're just constantly growing and changing.
Totally. And yes, and then you're nailing that for sure. And so do you ever offer visualization of this experience? Do you ever go that route where you will kind of do visualizations with people because visualization is so powerful. It's a way that we can really, as you say, co-create. So being a part of like visualizing how do you want to feel and visualizing how you, right?
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
Are you doing in this new body of yours? It feels like it's, changed.
Yeah, I think visualization is a super powerful technique. We've definitely proven it with neuroscience. Not to go too far down any different rabbit holes, but I think depending upon what somebody's like intuitive senses are, sometimes they're a little bit less clairvoyant, meaning like clear seeing, and they're more into, they have a different kind of clairsense about them, like clairaudience or clairsentience or claircognizance or whatever. So I do like to help my clients understand their intuitive gifts. I also love human design because in the concept of human design, there are specific manifestors and non-specific manifestors. So this is kind of something interesting, but specific manifestors, which I am, I really love like a good specific visualization exercise. Like, what do you see around you? Like take in all of this like a movie playing in your mind. But a lot of people are also non-specific manifestors. And so for them, it's just like, how do you feel? And so I do love to do visualization with people, but some people really don't latch onto that. An exercise that I've really nerded out on over the last year is called scripting. And so scripting is like where you are writing in your journal about a day that you just had or a moment that you just had in the future that hasn't been written yet, but you're writing about it as though you just experienced it.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so you could be like scripting out, like, I just had the best day ever. I woke up and this is what I did and yada, yada. And so basically like that can be another fun way to approach it. And so sometimes if I am like scripting something out, like I have a trip coming up. Okay, I'm getting on the cruise ship to go on this trip with my family. And I'm so excited because I just saw this new client, application form come in or 3 new people just joined my women's circle or whatever it might be. And I'll be like scripting that out in my journal. And that could be a fun way to approach things too. But
I love that.
Yeah, you could write this about, December 31st, 2025, writing about your year. You could script it for a day. You could script it for a year. You could script it about your body journey, whatever it happens to be.
I love that. Yeah. Very cool. Well, we should probably start to wrap up because we could talk forever. You guys said like the last time that we met, I was like, we could talk forever.
Yeah.
But tell us where people can find you, how they can work with you.
Yeah. So I offer one-on-one coaching. And my website is jess-reid, REID.com. And I love to help people heal their relationship with food and weight and body image. I also just love helping people find alignment in anything or healing in really anything that they feel is holding them back from being in alignment, really with this overarching goal of being that main character of your life, being that leading lady of your life. One of the things that really pushed me into starting my own coaching practice, even though I had had a dream in it for a really long time, was seeing my dad pass away. And on his deathbed, he was filled with so much regret. And then I learned about the book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by hospice nurse Bronnie Ware. And the number one regret of people on their deathbeds is, I wish I lived a life true to myself, not the life that others expected of me. In other words, I wish I lived a life I actually liked. I wish I lived in alignment with who I wanted to be. And this is how most people are going out of this life. And it's heartbreaking, and it doesn't have to be you. And so whatever way that you're feeling out of alignment or you're feeling untrue to yourself, that's what I love to help people do, is come back into the frequency of love and feel how you want to feel. And then, of course, when you're feeling how you want to feel, you're going to be way more likely to actually see those external results that you do want for yourself. But it's flipping it. It's flipping the whole script. Yeah. And so this is what I do in one-on-one coaching. I also have a women's circle. It's called the WildWellness Women's Circle. And I think a really important part of you being the leading lady of your own life is surrounding yourself with other people who are also doing the same thing, as opposed to other people who are just living out of that victim consciousness, right? You become who you surround yourself with. And so it's really, really difficult when you take this step out and you start to live oppositional to the culture. Other people don't get it. Other people are like, okay, yeah. And other people are afraid too. And other people can be critical, well-meaning, but they're afraid for you, right? In a lot of ways. And so I felt really very, very lonely many times in my own healing journey. And I'm sure that you have too. And this is why it's so important. One of the things that I found the most interesting in my life, especially like doing something like going on a psychedelic retreat, is like, never have I felt more like myself than when I'm with strangers. This is why, like, kind of like if anybody has gone through like a later in life divorce and then you find yourself dating again and you really realize like, wow, this is who I am, how I'm representing myself right now with this brand new person. I can be anyone and anything. Nobody has any expectations of me. It's almost like permission to reinvent yourself when you meet new people. And so it's a really beautiful opportunity as well. This is an online monthly membership that I offer called the WildWellness Women's Circle. And I have an online course as well called Rewild Your Wellness. And it's kind of a self-paced coaching tool that helps people to heal the food and weight and body image journey. So all of these are listed on my website. I also have my own podcast called Wild Wellness with Jess. I'm on social media, Facebook and Instagram at Wild Wellness with Jess. And yeah, I would just love to meet you.
Well, thank you so much again. I love our conversation so much.
Me too. This is so good.
It's always good. We always have great convos. So again, we have another episode together, episode number 2. I'll put it in the show notes. But thank you again so much. Thank you for listening, guys. And bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Into the Work Therapy for Empaths and Seekers. Don't forget to grab your free gift, your Shadow Work Transformation Bundle at michellepoverman.com. I've included everything you need to get started to break through the patterns of self-sabotage and finally start to heal the parts of yourself that are getting in the way of truly reaching your potential. From a powerful meditation designed to help you meet and embrace your shadow self, to the guide that's full of curated prompts and important questions to support you on this journey. This really can be the work for you to unmask the root cause of all the issues you've been experiencing, honestly, and start to feel free to believe in yourself and go for what you want. The link for this free bundle is in the show notes. And if you like this episode, I would be so grateful if you could take a moment and rate, click and follow, and leave a review. Of course, you can always follow me on socials at Michelle Poverman. And keep in mind, as you embark on your journey from spark to brilliance, remember, the universe is always conspiring in favor of your awakening. Everything that's happening is in support of you lighting your own fire within. So until we meet again, may your path be well lit and your heart be guided. Shine bright, seekers. Until next time.